Good afternoon, my name is Mr. Giaccone. I'm going to go over some figurative language today, so please be prepared to take some notes and follow along as I go through this. We're going to discuss figurative language versus literal language to start off with. In order for us to understand the different topics of figurative language, we're going to need to understand figurative meaning versus literal meaning. With figurative meaning in language, these are words that we use that go beyond their literal meaning, their ordinary meaning rather. We use words creatively to convey meaning. That's why we use figurative language. When we're speaking or when we're writing, we want to use figurative language because we want what we're communicating to be diverse, interesting, humorous, and that's why we use different pieces of figurative language, which correlates right with literal meaning. When you use figurative language, you are actually saying something, you're communicating a statement. So the literal meaning is derived from the figurative language that you use. So what are you really saying? And that's what we're going to go through with 4 different pieces of figurative language today. So today what we're going to do is we are going to go over 4 pieces of figurative language, and here are the first 2 that we will discuss. I ask that you take notes that you will be able to go back and understand. So you do not need to copy this verbatim, but take notes as we go through it, and there will be stopping points for you to practice. The first piece of figurative language I want to discuss is hyperbole. Hyperbole is a really fun piece of figurative language to use. Hyperbole is an extreme exaggeration. You use hyperbole to really emphasize a point. My example here is the zit on my forehead is a mountain. People use hyperboles all the time to convey literal meanings. For example, I come home on a tired day, I could say, I did the work of 1,000,000 men today. What I'm literally saying is, I did a lot of work today. But I'm using hyperbole to convey that message to whomever I'm speaking to. So if you would take this time to stop, I would like everyone to write 2 examples using hyperbole, where you're using an extreme exaggeration to convey a literal meaning or a literal point. Our second piece of figurative language that I want to talk about is imagery. Imagery is huge in writing and when speaking because we want to have our audiences, whether they're our readers or our people that we're talking to, be interested in what we're saying. So using imagery is when you use descriptive language to paint a picture that will allow someone to tap into his or her 5 senses. Hearing, seeing, touching, tasting, and smelling. So you want to use really good descriptive language in order for your reader or listener to be able to tap into one of those senses. So I put the art and writing where an author uses descriptive language to hit a reader's 5 senses. The example I used is when I went on vacation to California, I stayed in a beautiful yellow bed and breakfast. When you looked out the window, you could see this gorgeous waterfall fountain and it had 4 lion's heads on each side. There were plants everywhere. There was seating for everyone. You walked down a few steps to a beautiful garden. So that's the example I used with my students, and I had them envision what I experienced when I went on spring break last year. So my example was similar to that. I stayed in a yellow house with red roses, delicious lilacs, and a serene waterfall fountain. I want my reader or listener to see the flowers, smell the lilacs, and visualize this cool, awesome waterfall. The other 2 pieces of figurative language that we're going to discuss are onomatopoeia and personification. Onomatopoeia is one of my favorite words to use, so this is probably my favorite piece of figurative language. Plus it's difficult to spell. Onomatopoeia is when authors use words to represent the sound an object makes or represent the sound of the word. Buzz, pow, boom. My example is before we went outside, I heard all the zips of everyone's zippers. So the way I said zips, that's exactly what it sounds like when you zip something up. So that's something you can use in your writing to give sound effect in your writing. So onomatopoeia is pretty cool to allow you to create sound in your writing or when you're speaking. Another one of my favorite pieces of figurative language is personification. Personification is when you give non-human objects or inanimate objects human characteristics. And specifically, it's when writers or speakers give human qualities and characteristics to non-human things. This is a great way to convey humor and develop non-human characters. When I say it's a great way to develop humor, is you can use it in a way to be cheeky or witty, and you can also use it to develop like cartoon characters. My example here is the pencil sharpener has eaten 5 of my pencils this week. We all know that pencil sharpeners sharpen pencils, but they don't eat pencils. So you would use that to convey the literal meaning of, man, I'm going through a lot of pencils because this pencil sharpener is just eating my pencils and it's not doing its job. So, and a lot of cartoonists will use personification to give human characteristics to their characters, so we as viewers and readers can visualize and see them come to life, even though Beauty and the Beast, a candlestick, doesn't talk or walk, but in Beauty and the Beast it does. So that is personification conveyed in a movie that I would hope we're all pretty familiar with. Again, I would like you to give me 2 examples of onomatopoeia and 2 examples of personification in your notes, because we're about to do the following. Now there are other pieces of figurative language other than the 4 that I've covered today. But these 4 I wanted to start with because I think they're a lot of fun. You can do a lot with them in your writing and in your speaking. As you become a better writer, you're going to become a better speaker. So knowing figurative language is going to help you both in reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So good job on figurative language today. Now, I have a daunting task, and it might go a little weird and it might be successful, but I want you all to try it. I want you to try to write a brief story using all 8 of the examples that you have come up with today and see what you design, and then we'll be able to share them with each other. But the point being that you're able to identify in your writing the 8 different places where you demonstrated your understanding of the 4 pieces of figurative language that we went over: onomatopoeia, personification, hyperbole, and I forgot the last one, imagery. Thank you.